Gentlemen, we are live in Lapland. As you can see all around me, we have snow, and a little bit of a thaw. Unfortunately, global warming has kicked in. We were expecting a temperature at this time of the year of about -15 to -25. Instead, we have +3. There's my cameraman, Alex. Alex, give a wave. Very talented magician from the UK if you're looking for a magician. And he's going to be taking over the camera in a moment. But as you can see, we are ready to begin. What I'm going to do, first of all, let me explain. At this time of the year, it's a little bit dull here. This is what the locals here in Finland called Camus, which is the time when the sun has disappeared. It's still light here, but if you were to look around, you will see no sun. That's because the sun dipped below the horizon a couple of days ago. This varies according to your latitude, but once you hit the Arctic Circle, and we're above the Arctic Circle here, at some point during the year, the sun disappears, and at some point in the year, you have 24 hours daylight. It's the land of the midnight sun. Well, at the moment, we're in that time of Camus, when the sun has disappeared. It won't rise again until sometime around Christmas Day, or maybe a day or two after. So we're in 24-hour darkness, but of course, it's sort of a dawn light here. And because of the snow that's reflected, it looks brighter than it is. So it's noon here, it's 10 o'clock local time back in Ireland and the UK. We are ready to try Coke and Mentos in the Arctic. Now, here's a weird thing. If you were to boil a kettle and pour yourself a cup of tea and throw it up into the air in freezing conditions, it actually freezes on the way down and falls in a rain of ice crystals, like a fall of snow on your head. It looks quite spectacular. The first time, it's hard to commit yourself to throwing a cup of boiling water over your head, but it's an amazing sight. It's got to do with temperature differences. Isaac Newton, a great English physicist, came up with the theory behind it. Essentially, if I throw cold water up in the air, cold water will hit the ground. If I throw boiling water in the air, ice will come down. It's because of the temperature difference between the air and the water. The bigger that temperature difference, the faster it will freeze. That's why if you put some hot jelly into the fridge, it will cool down very fast. If you put cold jelly into the fridge, it takes a lot longer to freeze. We owe that fact to Isaac Newton, who was born on Christmas Day. Kind of seasonal, isn't it, folks? Well, today we are going to attempt, I have a kettle there on the ground, and I have a mug. I'm going to throw some boiling water over my head. That's going to be painful because I know the temperature difference isn't enough to freeze. That's why I'm wearing the protective gear. Now, we're also going to do the Coke and Mentos experiment. My idea was that in the Arctic, the Coke would shoot up into the air and freeze in midair. I've seen this at a temperature of -45, where a guy came out of a hotel, pulled open a tab of Coke, and of course the Coke couldn't hold the gas at that temperature, so it sprayed out, and then it froze in midair, and he had a Coke popsicle. I was hoping to recreate that. I suspect it's not going to work, but in the words of the Nobel Prize winner, Samuel Beckett, who won it for literature, not for physics, by the way, try, fail, try again, fail again, fail better. So today's experiment may not work because of the temperature. I blame Donald Trump. He got elected last night officially, and already global warming has kicked in. Hey, but what can we say? Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to start with the Coke and Mentos experiment, but before I do that, just for any school kids that are listening in, a quick word about our environment. We're in Lapland. Lapland is the part of Finland, Norway, Sweden, and stretching just into Russia, above the Arctic Circle. The inhabitants, the locals, they call themselves Sami, or Laps, we call them. They're actually a Mongoloid race. They came from Mongolia a bit before Genghis Khan and the Golden Horde. They've been here about 1,000 years, following the reindeer. Reindeer range all the way from Mongolia up to here. They taste delicious if you need to know, but that's another matter. That's the local economy. They follow the reindeer, and today they're also heavily involved in tourism. None of them bother with the Coke and Mentos experiment, so I suspect this is the first time it has been done in this locality. Now, the Mentos come in a different bag from back home, but they taste just as good. Here's the Coke. By the way, if you want to do this experiment at home, a cool way of doing it, open the Coke bottle, get a couple of Mentos mints, thread them onto a bit of thread, lower them carefully but don't let them touch the Coke. Screw on the cap again, trim the thread and put it back in the fridge. Then when your mum or dad goes to the fridge, takes out a bottle of soda, unscrews it, the mints will drop down, they will get sprayed. Very funny, might get you in trouble, don't say you got it from Professor Baloney. Okay, here we go. Now, if you're at home, on your own, and nobody looking, we're going to put the Mentos mints in here now. If you're on your own, I want you to actually do the countdown with me. The 10, 9, 8. You may feel a bit foolish, but if you do feel a bit foolish, just remember this. You are nowhere near as foolish as me standing in the Arctic in a pair of shorts. So let that be some compensation to you. Ooh, about 6 Mentos. They're not mints, they're fruity. Are we ready? We screw this on, and we should have a Coke and Mentos geyser. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. I hope you're counting along. 4, 3, 2, 1. And we have liftoff. That is the most pathetic Coke and Mentos. Oh no! It's beginning to take off! It's beginning. Now I have to admit, I find that strange. Normally that shoots about 8 or 9 feet into the air, and normally it blasts off immediately. It could actually be the cold that has slowed down the reaction, in which case the experiment wasn't a failure, because every experiment, even if it doesn't give you the results you're expecting, tells you something. That's the beauty about science. It's a process of forming a theory, doing an experiment to testing the theory, and then assess the theory afterwards in the result, in the light of the result of the experiment. So now we have half a bottle of fruity Coke. Didn't freeze in midair, but we got a different reaction than we would have got doing the Coke and Mentos experiment back home. Now the experiment I have been dreading. It was the one I was looking forward to, throwing a cup of water over my head. We have a kettle on the ground. Do you know what? I believe the locals are right. Stick to the reindeer herding. You can see where the kettle has already melted a hole in the snow. Oh dear. Boiling water right over my head. Okay, here we go. We won't bother with a countdown this time. That's the snowplow driving by. I don't know why we have a snowplow today. The snow has thawed. Okay, here we go. Sorry, I'll pull down the protective goggles. No need in scalding my eyes. Boiling water in the air. Does it come down as... Oh, it missed me. I am presuming it didn't freeze. Ow! That's hot. That's hot. Oh! Ladies and gentlemen, there you have seen what happens to a Coke fountain in the Arctic. It's nowhere near as spectacular as back home, possibly because of the cold. You've also seen what happens when it's not quite cold enough to throw a cup of boiling water over your head in safety. It has been fantastic sharing a couple of minutes with you. If you want to find out more about my super science show, go to www.partyscience.ie. New website was launched this week, and I hope you've all enjoyed it. From myself, from my cameraman, Alex, to each and every one of you and the World Wide Web, a very Merry Christmas.
That was 11 minutes.